Volodymyr Kyrylovych Vynnychenko was a Ukrainian statesman, political activist, writer, playwright, artist. As a writer, Vynnychenko is recognized in Ukrainian literature as a leading modernist writer in pre-revolutionary Ukraine, who wrote short stories, novels, and plays, but in Soviet Ukraine his works were forbidden, like that of many other Ukrainian writers, from the 1930s until the mid-1980s. Prior to his entry onto the stage of Ukrainian politics, he was a long-time political activist, who lived abroad in Western Europe from 1906 to 1914. His works reflect his immersion in the Ukrainian revolutionary milieu, among impoverished and working-class people, and among emigres from the Russian Empire living in Western Europe. Biography. Early years. Vynnychenko was born in a village Veslykat, the Kherson Governorate of the Russian Empire, in a family of peasants. His father Kyrylo Vasilyevich Vynnychenko, earlier in his life, was a peasant serf, has moved from a village to the city of Yelisavetgrad, where he married a widow Yevdokia Pavlenko. From her previous marriage, Yevdokia had 3 children, Andrei, Maria, and Vasil, while from the marriage with Kyrylo only one son, Volodymyr. Upon graduating from a local public school, the Vynnychenko family managed to enroll Volodymyr to the Yelisavetgrad male gymnasium. In later grades of the gymnasium he took part in a revolutionary organization and wrote a revolutionary poem for which was incarcerated for a week, and excluded from school. That did not stop him to continue his studying, as he was getting prepared for his test to obtain the high school diploma. He successfully took the test in the Zlatopol Gymnasium, from which obtained his attestation of maturity. In 1900, Vynnychenko joined the Revolutionary Ukrainian Party and enrolled in the law department at Kiev University. But in 1902 and 1903 he was expelled for participation in revolutionary activities. As a member of RUP, he provided political agitation and propaganda among the Kievan workers and peasants from Poltava, and jailed for several months in Lukyanovsky prison. He managed to escape out of his incarceration. In 1902, Vynnychenko published in Kievskaya Starina his first novel, Beauty and Strength, after which he became known as a writer. Afterward, due to a newer arrest, he was forcibly drafted into punitive battalion, the Russian Imperial Army, where he began to agitate soldiers with revolutionary propaganda. Tipped off that his arrest was imminent, Vynnychenko illegally fled to the eastern Galicia, Austria-Hungary. When trying to return to Ukraine with revolutionary literature, Vynnychenko was arrested and jailed in Kiev for 2 years with a threat to spend the rest of his life in Katorga. After his release in 1905, he passed his exams for a law degree in Kiev University. In 1906, Vynnychenko was arrested for a 3rd time, again for his political activities, and jailed for a year before his scheduled trial. However, the wealthy patron of Ukrainian literature and culture, Yevhen Kokolenko, paid his bail, and Vynnychenko fled Ukraine again, effectively become an émigré writer abroad from 1907 to 1914, living in Lemberg, Vienna, Geneva, Paris, Florence, Berlin. In 1911, Vynnychenko married Rosalia Lifshitz, a French Jewish doctor. From 1914 to 1917, Vynnychenko lived illegally near Moscow throughout much of the World War I and returned to Kiev in 1917 to assume a leading role in Ukrainian politics. Head of the first Ukrainian government. After the Russian Revolution in February 1917, Vynnychenko served as the head of the General Secretariat, a representative executive body of the Russian Provisional Government in Ukraine. He was authorized by the Central Rada of Ukraine to conduct negotiations with the Russian Provisional Government. 1917. Vynnychenko resigned his post in the General Secretariat period on August 13 in protest for the government of Russia declining the Universal of Central Rada. For a brief period he was replaced by Dmytro Doroshenko, who composed a new government the next day. Yet unexpectedly he requested his resignation as well on August 18. Vynnychenko was offered to return, form a cabinet and redesign the Second Universal to petition a federal union with the Russian Republic. His second government was confirmed by Alexander Kerensky on September 1. It is often claimed that political mistakes of Vynnychenko and Mikhailo Hrushevsky cost the newly established Ukrainian People's Republic its independence. Both men were strongly opposed to the creation of the Army of the Republic and repeatedly denied the requests by Simon Petliura to use his volunteer forces as the core of a would-be army. After the October Revolution and the Kiev Bolshevik uprising, many of his secretaries resigned after the Central Rada disapproved the Bolsheviks' actions in Petrograd, with the ongoing confrontations in Moscow as well as the other cities in the country. On January 22, 1918, the Ukrainian People's Republic has proclaimed its independence due to the Bolshevik intervention headed by Volodymyr Vynnychenko. The country was squeezed between the abandoned German-Russian front lines to its western border and the advancing Bolshevik forces of Muravyov along the eastern border. Within days, Mikhail Muravyov managed to invade Kiev, forcing the government to evacuate Zhytomyr, whose retreat was secured by the great efforts of the Yevhen-Kono Valley's Sig riflemen. During the evacuation, the Ukrainian government managed to secure military assistance in the face of the Central Powers. The government of the Ukrainian People's Republic signed a highly criticized treaty with Germans to repel the Bolshevik forces in exchange for a right to expropriate food supplies. The treaty also required for the Russian SFSR to recognize the Ukrainian People's Republic. Around that time, the Vynnychenko's government established an economic agreement with the government of Belarus People's Republic through the Belarus Chamber of Commerce in Kiev. Alas, Vynnychenko's was replaced as well by the socialist revolutionary government of Vsevolod Holubovich. After the coup d'état of Hetman Skoropadsky in April 1918, Vynnychenko left Kiev. Late after forming the Directorate of Ukraine, he took an active part in organizing a revolt against the Hetman. The revolt was successful and Vynnychenko returned to the capital on December 19, 1918. The Directorate, a temporary executive council of 5, proclaimed the restoration of the Ukrainian People's Republic. The Directorate was put in charge by the Labour Congress until the Ukrainian Constituent Assembly would convene to elect a permanent body of government. Resignation. Vynnychenko, unable to restore order and overcome the disagreement with Petliura, stepped down on February 10, 1919 and emigrated abroad. In a brief period while in Vienna in 1920, he wrote his 3-volume work, Rebirth of the Nation. At the same time, at the end of 1919, Vynnychenko resigned from the Ukrainian Social Democratic Labour Party and formed the Foreign Group of Ukrainian Communists. Soviet Ukraine. He formed the Foreign Group of the Ukrainian Communist Party, which was mainly made up of other former members of the Ukrainian Social Democratic Party, in order to promulgate this position. In June 1920, Vynnychenko himself traveled to Moscow in an attempt to come to an agreement with the Bolsheviks. After 4 months of unsuccessful negotiation, Vynnychenko had become disillusioned with the Bolsheviks. He accused them of great Russian chauvinism and insincerity as socialists. In September 1920 he returned to the emigration, where he revealed his impressions of Bolshevik rule. This split the foreign group of the Ukrainian Communist Party. Some remained pro-Bolshevik and indeed returned to Soviet Ukraine. Others supported Vynnychenko, and with him conducted a campaign against the Soviet regime in their organ Nova Doba. Life abroad. Vynnychenko spent the following 30 years in Europe, residing in Germany in the 1920s, then moving to France. As an émigré, Vynnychenko resumed his career as a writer. In 1919 his writing was republished in an 11-volume edition in the 1920s. In 1934 Vynnychenko moved from Paris to Mougins, near Cannes, on the Mediterranean coast, where he lived on a homestead-type residence as a self-supporting farmer and continued to write, notably a philosophical exposition of his ideas about happiness, Concordism. Vynnychenko called his place Sacco Utog. He died in Mougins, near Cannes, France in 1951. Rosalia Lifshitz, after her death, passed the estate to Smovana Vynnychenko, who emigrated to France after the World War II and lived with Vynnychenko since 1948. Vynnychenko's latter legacy. Vynnychenko is still somewhat famous in Ukraine. In today's Ukraine, Vynnychenko has not been as much lionized as Mikhailo Hrushevsky, as Vynnychenko was seen as being too much left-wing to make a good symbolic figure. Vynnychenko's archives are housed in the Columbia University, New York, and supervised by a commission of the Ukrainian Academy of Arts and Sciences. Films based on works of Vynnychenko: 1990 Black Panther and White Bear, 1991 Sin, 1995 TV series Island of Love, Episode 8 Engagement, after the novel Engagement. Depiction of Vynnychenko in cinema 1939 Shkors by Dmytro Milivtenko, 1957 Truth by Georgy Babenko, 1970 Peace to Huts, Water Palaces by Vladislav Strzelczyk, 1970 Kosubinsky Family by Harry Opens. Bibliography. Vynnychenko, V. Selected Short Stories. Longwood Academic, 1991. ISBN 9780893416423. Vynnychenko, V. Rebirth of the Nation. Volume 1-3. Kiev, Vienna, DZ Van, 1920.